Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy. What do you mean we're going to find out together?
If it makes sense.
Oh, I'm kind of scared now. Let's hear it. What do you got for us today, Claire?
Today we're headed to the state with the city that is the capital peanut capital of the world, Alabama. I don't know why I read it backwards. It just happened, all right? I didn't mix up the letters, I mixed up the words. It's the peanut capital of the world, good old Alabama.
All right.
Anyway, roughly the 80s. Now, the day's piece of shit is Curtis Grantham, who will kill 3 ladies, Dawn Ball, Rose Medley, and Geraldine Bergdorf. Now, we'll start off when Peg Leg Charlie, who was a Vietnam vet with an artificial leg, bellies up to his normal watering hole at the Blue Lagoon Motel in Key West, Florida.
I really am enjoying your descriptions. I'm just sitting here making faces. I know you can't see them, but they're there, none the same.
When I was typing it, I was just like, she's going to love this.
I sure am.
Start off with Peg Leg Charlie.
Does he really have a peg leg?
I just said he was a Vietnam vet with an artificial leg.
That's not a
You
peg.
don't know what kind of artificial leg he had.
I know, that's why I'm asking.
I'm just telling you, his nickname is Peg Leg Charlie. He's a Vietnam vet with an artificial leg. That's where he got the Peg Leg Charlie nickname, I would assume.
Do you think he dresses up as a pirate for Halloween?
I do not.
Maybe.
Anyway, so the Blue Lagoon Motel bar thing is a local place where fishermen and truck drivers will come to hang out and have a drink. It's locally not a place where a lot of people want to go, so I assume it's kind of a dive bar kind of situation. Now, Pegleg Charlie starts drunkenly telling a story about these 2 fellers, Curtis Grantham, who's 36 years old, and Thomas Poole III, who's 46, who had raped and murdered a gal in or around Phoenix City, Alabama. Apparently, Thomas had been bragging to him about killing this girl with Curtis. Now, Pegleg Charlie would retell his story to a Key West patrolman who would kickstart the information being called up to the Phoenix City Police some 725 miles north of them, which is where this all goes sideways. Now, Curtis appears to not have had a bad life or a head injury, so he's just a colossal piece of shit for no fucking reason. That's the short of it. His dad was an Army vet who made a successful real estate broker career for himself, Grantham Commercial Company. He even would go on to be a state director of the Columbus Board of Realtors. He grew up with 3 brothers and a sister. He was on the pool team in school.
What's the pool team?
I don't know. I'm just saying he was a...
Isn't that like the swim team?
I wasn't in a swim team, whatever they call it. I know he was in the papers because he was doing whatever competition when he was a youngin'. And they said the school pool team. I don't know.
Well, is that like billiards or is that like...
You know what? I didn't even consider that. I assumed it was aquatic of nature. But I don't think young kids do billiards. I was assuming it was the swim team, I guess. Whatever, Andrea. I'm just saying, Curtis appears to not have any reason to be a hostile little prick. Now, again, he would grow up in that area. Now, Columbus is in Georgia. It's a border town next to Phoenix City, Alabama. So that's the area where he grows up in. So if I say Columbus, I realize it's in Georgia. Phoenix City, that's Alabama. Anyway, he'd grow up in that area, and when he grows up, he operates a landscaping business. That's when enter Thomas Poole III. He'd be hitchhiking through the area when Curtis would pick him up and offer him some work at his landscaping business. This is in March of 1987. Now, Thomas would claim that he didn't think there was anything off about Curtis until the night he asked him, "Haven't you ever just wanted to go out, get a woman, tie her up and beat her?" To which Thomas claims he responded, "No, man, are you crazy?" To which I would be like, it's time for me to keep on drifting.
Yeah.
That's a really weird thing to ask your employer.
That's a really weird thing to ask anybody, especially somebody you haven't known 2 weeks. I'm not saying lifelong, but like, hey, ever considered murdering somebody?
He didn't say
I know
murder.
it, but it's still tie her up and beat her.
That seems like a weird
It is
question.
a weird question. And on March 27th, 1987, only 10 days after Curtis picked up Thomas, 25-year-old Rosemarie Medley would be dropped off by her sister-in-law at Porky's, a local Phoenix City bar. I'm glad you laughed because I was like, is that the 80s version of Tinder? It's Porky's. Anyway, poor Rosemarie would disappear without a trace after leaving Porky's with a man who was about 6'2" with long brown hair and a beard around 9 p.m. Now, Rosemarie is all of 5 feet 4 inches, 120 pounds, and had appeared intoxicated when she walked out of Porky's. She had also told the bouncer that she'd be right back and to look for her if she wasn't back in 10 minutes. But she wouldn't be back. And I can just say, that bouncer's a piece of shit.
Well,
He wasn't looking real hard. I realize his job isn't.
to babysit?
Well, it sort of is. But
no, it's not. It's to babysit in the bar, not babysit once you leave the bar. That's not his job.
Fine.
For all he knows, she got it for more than 10 minutes. What's he supposed to do? Call the cops because she might be getting boned longer than she expected?
Anyway, Rosemarie's brother would say that she was a real redneck that was stupid brave. She wouldn't back off to anyone and wasn't scared easy. And it was his belief that Rosemarie had a gut instinct about the feller she was walking out with when she told the bouncer to look for her, but the alcohol interfered with her intuition to listen to herself. Now, with any missing person case, the police will consider that a person might have chose to leave their life behind, especially, minus any reason that they were taken anywhere. But Rosemarie had cash in her purse that was at her mother's house. She had also left her son. Although she was facing a charge of drunk driving and had an on-again, off-again relationship with her soon-to-be ex-husband, Edward Skipper Medley, which as of late was more off than on. I appreciate that you like all my names in this story.
I really do. Skipper, Pegleg, come on now.
Don't forget, this happens outside of Porky's. This is a good old quality Alabama story is what it is.
Especially since she left Porky's to go get porked, apparently.
Yeah.
I realized something bad happened to her, and I'm not victim shaming. It's just funny that it's Porky's, and she left to go get some, and then even told the bouncer she'd be back in 10 minutes. She didn't think that feller was going to last long, that she thought she could leave, go get some, and return all within 10 minutes.
You don't know what she was going for.
Yeah, I know.
I was also considering maybe some weed or something. So she's going to go out to the car. She was going out there for something, whether it was going to be porked in the parking lot.
Porked in Porky's parking lot?
So not 2 months of his mother missing, 10-year-old Donnie wanted to start a reward fund for information on what happened to his mom.
That poor baby.
Apparently, in order to start that, the bank required a $100 deposit to be set up in order to set up that reward fund.
What?
Well, I mean, a minimum deposit, apparently. I didn't even know, by the way, it never occurred to me because I've never had to start a missing persons fund or a reward or whatever, that there are special accounts for that, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Donnie's grandmother, who he now lived with since his mother disappeared, they lived together in a mobile home in the Ladonia area, which is not far from Phoenix City. They're next to each other. So same county, just a hop, skip, and a jump over. She didn't have that kind of money, and it broke her heart to not be able to do that. By the way, Donnie was also living with his grandparents because his dad beat feet after his mother disappeared.
You mean Skipper? Skip Town? Skipper's a skipper. Hey, he got lost on an island.
You're an idiot.
We got to have a show or movie reference. It's not Homicide Hobbies without us referencing something.
Good old Gilligan's
from the TV. Mm-hmm. The name was fitting, apparently.
Well, I feel like he was worried that he was going to be accused of having something to do with her disappearance since they were in the beginning stages of a divorce. Ironically, he also was facing charges of a DUI. Forgot that one. But so when he skips town, he's ends up with a warrant or whatever because he was supposed to be there for that. But
maybe he used the fact that he thought he'd be accused of her disappearance.
That's what
but in reality, it was the DUI why he really skipped town.
That's what I figured.
Or maybe
because
maybe it was just all of it.
Yeah, he wanted to beat feet. He's like, she left. Get out of here. But I just thought it was funny because he like over the chunk that she's disappeared, he'll call the house twice while she's missing, and it doesn't sound like a concerned spouse, even if it's on the ex side, soon to be, to disappear. But I just thought it was funny because when Rosemary's mom would tell him that the officer investigating still wanted to talk to him, but his excuse would be he didn't have a phone. But I was like, you're on one.
Okay.
You're on one now, jackass.
Unless he's on a payphone.
He still could call investigators. He's on a phone.
He don't got that many quarters, Claire. You don't know his life.
Stupid. But Donnie, her son, Rosemary's, the 10-year-old, he had been saving up for his first car when he turned 16. He changed his motivation for collecting cans and doing odd jobs for his grandfather to saving money to find his mom, which broke my heart a little bit.
That's so sad. That poor kid. He sounds responsible as hell, but...
I know. Now, police wouldn't have any leads in her case, and it would remain cold over the next 15 months, even after a $1,000 reward would be offered. Now, bear in mind, there's no crime scene to investigate, there's no body, and police don't know if they're still dealing with somebody who willingly left or was abducted. So it's very difficult when all you have is a missing person and no real place to start. Now, meanwhile, you've got a family going through hell every day. They go without answers. Now, mind you, her family's of the opinion she was taken.
Because she was.
Yeah, well, police have to be open to she left also. That people do it all the time. Just because family doesn't want to believe that's a possibility, they have to be open to it can go either way.
Had the police spoken to the doorman or bouncer at the bar yet? Because if the bouncer is sitting there saying that she said, if I'm not back in 10 minutes, come look for me, I feel like that's a pretty big red flag that she didn't leave on her own accord because she was planning to return.
Yeah, but she still could have decided to leave with that feller. Now, nobody knew who that feller was, so they are aware that the last time she was seen was when the bouncer said she was going to be back and then just never came back. But that's where it's at, and again, nobody knows who the feller is to talk to him.
Right.
Now, Rosemary's mom, like I said, this whole 15-month period, the family's going through hell. You've got a little boy who once answers as well. His mom was his buddy. They had a close relationship. Rosemary's mom couldn't head to work for 2 months after her daughter's disappearance. I think part of, her and her daughter were also close. And then also now having to be the caretaker for her grandson, deal with her daughter being missing, it's just a whole lot.
That is a lot.
They also weren't sure if maybe somebody was going to be calling for almost like a ransom kind of thing. Not that they had money to be doing that with, but they weren't sure if she is alive and just being held captive.
Yeah, they have no idea.
Yeah, I would imagine when your family member goes missing, you're going to hope they're still alive and you don't want to miss that phone call.
Well, and on the other side of things, God, that's gotta suck. Having your family member go missing. Not only did her parents have to take over raising her son, but then they also have to carry on with life as normal. Even for the little boy, you still got to go to school. You still have other priorities. Life doesn't just stop. And that has to suck.
So, and then I felt bad for Donnie because people at school would ask, and he has nothing to say. So he would say that he just looked forward to the summer. He didn't get a break from it. He would go home, he'd miss his mom. He'd go to school, he'd be asked about her. So Rosemary's mom would try to keep him involved in sports and keep him busy and them focusing on other things, which I can only imagine is so hard on her because she's also hurting too, but she's got to be strong for this little boy too.
That's so sad. Yeah. I don't know how families cope with that.
Hell is what it is. It's hell. But her and her husband would rotate leaving the house so that someone was always near the house phone just in case they got a phone call from Rosemary or her captors. Because she would stand by all the time, it was unlike Rosemarie to disappear. Even when her and Skipper would get into fights and she'd drive off somewhere, she would let her mom know before she left where she was going and where she was. But it's not like she beat feet and was out of town. She's just like, this is what's going on. And they were close. So it's unlike her to be gone, let alone 15 months and no word.
Yeah, it's out of character, and it's frustrating that there's no word from the police on anything. It's stupid.
No, that was in March. In February the next year, a family member would find the body of 33-year-old Dawn Ball on the floor of her home around 6:20 p.m. Her throat had been cut sometime between 10 p.m. and 12 a.m. during an apparent burglary. Her 2-year-old son Kevin was found unharmed in the house. Now, she also would leave behind the older daughter.
How close is that to where the other lady went missing?
Same area. Now, back to Thomas, who's running his trap in Florida. Thomas would make his way back from Key West willingly when he hears Phoenix City police officers would like to talk to him about, the story Pegleg Charlie had been telling. Now, Thomas would arrive back in the Phoenix City area on June 25th, 88. Which is just a few months after this lady's found with her throat slit in her house. Now, Thomas would tell authorities that he and Curtis left Porky's bar with Rosemarie in his pickup truck with his dog. They would drive her out to the west side of Highway 431 near the Yuki Country Club off of Highway 431, roughly 12 miles south of Phoenix City, so that's where Porky's bar was. They would then tie her to a tree, make her act like a dog. Then Curtis would rape her, followed by Thomas. Rosemarie was then brutalized by both men. Eventually, Curtis would entice his pit bull to also join in on...
What?
I don't know how one entices a dog to maul someone, but apparently let the dog have at her, before ending poor Rosemarie's life by cutting her throat.
That is horrible.
Now, Curtis would then make the comment not to worry about the murder. I've done it before and buried them out here too. They've never been found.
Ew.
They would then take Rosemarie's jeans, her white sweater and tennis shoes, and burn the evidence. Thomas would lead 3 officers to a 3-foot deep grave in a swampy wooded area near Seal, which is just south of Phoenix City. Now here is where Rosemarie Medley's body would be found. Also discovered were the remnants of her burned clothing that matched what she had been wearing when she was dropped off by her sister-in-law the night before. Or the night she went missing, not the night before. Now, authorities said without Thomas, Rosemarie would likely have never been found.
That is so sad.
Well, and you know what? 15 months? And then it's just like whatever life that her family was able to move on to, it all is like it's the day she went missing.
Yeah, it all came crashing back. But you know what? At least they have closure.
Yeah.
It's not what they wanted, but they're not left wondering, and now they can start to heal and move on.
That, and Donnie doesn't need to think that his mom just moved away and forgot about him.
Yeah. Poor baby.
Now, Curtis would take a plea deal and submit his confession, which allowed him to avoid the death penalty. So Curtis would end up taking a plea deal and submit his confession, which allowed him to avoid the death penalty, which would leave him to serve 2 life sentences in Union Springs, Alabama, and unable to be paroled before 55. Now, also under this agreement, he would direct officers to finding a 3rd grave of a woman he admitted to killing. Now, under this agreement, he was granted immunity for her murder. What? I know. I did the whole, who the fuck was behind all these deals? Now, Curtis would agree to show authorities where they could find the body of Geraldine Bergdorf, who had been missing since 1985. Her skeletal remains would be recovered just half a mile from where Rosemarie's body was. It took them 9 hours of digging before she was pulled from her shallow grave. She'd been missing for 5 years.
That's so sad. And he kept putting them in the same... Man, he did find a good area.
Now, the motivation, authorities would say, for making the deal was due to them not being able to corroborate a lot of the testimony Thomas gave. The DA was fearful for going to trial, with the only witness being someone who partook in the rape. And ultimately, Curtis ended up free on an appeal. So when you look at it as either he goes to jail now for a life sentence instead of him being put to death, or him ending up wiggling through the cracks and being able to kill again, that side I understand.
I guess.
Well, and the DA was also hopeful that a parole board would never approve Curtis's release based on the severity of his offenses. So Thomas's defense attorney would plead with the jury not to lump him with Curtis, who was a demon from hell, and to not convict him. But Thomas would end up getting 40 years for first-degree rape of Rosemarie. Originally, he was charged with her murder as well, but when Curtis confessed to doing it, that made it so Thomas was exonerated. Although he did try to pull the defense that he only raped her because he thought Curtis would kill him if he didn't participate.
I don't know how the male genitalia works like that, but I don't think if I was in fear for my life that I'd be able to have a nice strong one to give out, if you know what I mean.
Now, he was a bit whiny about his sentence.
You think?
Well, he said that if he had not come forward at all or cooperated with authorities, they wouldn't even have been on to Curtis, which is true. But I have mixed feelings because he deserved to be punished as well. However, if he wouldn't have cooperated, who knows what Curtis would have continued to do. And if he wouldn't have shown where Rosemarie's body was, she would have never been found. Shoot, they still wouldn't have found Geraldine. She'd been missing 5 years. So it's just one of those, ugh.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, but he got his, so he can be a whiny bitch about it as much as he'd like. Because here's a thought. After they took the first lady 5 years ago, he could have done something then, not continued to go along with it.
So he didn't know that Curtis had done that one. Because keep in mind, it was only he only had known Curtis 10 days prior to Rosemarie disappearing. I don't know what motivated Curtis to have someone participate, other than maybe he was trying to see how much he could get away with, and maybe it'd be more fun to share in that one. Or maybe he was going to eventually kill Thomas, or figured if he was a drifter, who would believe him? I don't know.
So you went kind of fast with this, and just so I can wrap my brain around it. So Curtis is the guy with the business, and Thomas is the drifter he gave a job to?
Thomas is the one who managed to drift to Key West and tell that story that Peg Leg Charlie would hear, and then Peg Leg Charlie would be telling... I don't even know who he was talking to. I think he was just fucking talking, and then ended up retelling that same story to a Key West police officer who passed it along to the Phoenix City people of, hey, do you have somebody missing? Because this guy has some information and you might want to talk to him.
You know what, though? Good on all of them, because for it being, what you said, 725 miles away.
They did something?
They could have easily been like, yeah. Instead of just being like, oh, it's not our problem, they actually did something about it. So good on them for that.
Plenty of times people do the whole, yeah, didn't happen around here, not worried. But Curtis would be up for parole in 2005.
He didn't get parole, did he?
No, he was denied parole.
Thank God.
But then
you got quiet for a second, and I knew you were being an asshole. And then it was like, well, is she being an asshole because she's about to drop this bombshell on me? Because I'm going to get real mad. But then I figured...
Then Curtis is up for parole again in 2011.
Is he
also
out?
Denied.
Are you going to sit here and be like, he got denied? Now he's out!
And then in 2022, he's up for parole again. Now, children of all of his victims continue to show up to hearings to plead for him to stay exactly where he is, because that's where he deserves to be.
Sure does.
He gets denied parole again. Now, his next parole date is January 2027. At the same date, Thomas's is also up for parole, and I hope they continue to deny them parole. However, eventually, Thomas is going to serve his entire 40 years and be out, which I feel like he's the less dangerous of the two. Not to say he deserves to be out either. Not to say he deserves to be out, because I think rapists are pieces of shit. I sure do hope that they continue to deny Curtis's parole.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting to think that he could ever be out.
He shouldn't ever be out. He's a colossal piece of garbage.
He is.
And you know what? Thomas isn't any better because he went along with it. He eventually did something, but he didn't do anything for a real long time. And realistically, he still didn't really do anything. He just told somebody else about it.
And he was bragging in a bar, probably because he was being a drunkard and just it slipped out. He didn't go to the police.
Right. So he doesn't get credit for doing shit. He got drunk and ran his fucking mouth, and then that's what landed them in jail.
And I feel like also the motivation for him to cooperate because his name was already affiliated with her being missing and murdered. I just thought it was particularly disgusting that he used his dog too.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
And I don't know. I have no time frame of how long she endured between the rape, the beating, the being tied up, the acting, being made to act like a dog, like the humiliation side of that, to how long they let the dog attack her for.
That's so sad. That poor woman. That is a terrible way to go. By dog.
It really is. Well, because the way I saw it is maybe, I mean, I don't know. I figured it either grabbed her leg or her arm or some part of her and did like the whole back and forth thing. Even if it like was like an ear or anything, it's so awful.
Yeah, that's so sad. That poor kid too.
Yeah.
And I think that's what makes things worse too, is when their loved one is found and you hear the brutality that they endured before they were murdered.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. Do you have any idea what happened to him?
He grows up to be a good person.
That's good.
Actually, all the victims' children are still in the area I mean, they were born and raised there, but from what I dug up, seem to be upstanding citizens doing good. They're not criminal, like drug addicted alcoholics. There wasn't a whole lot on them.
Which actually, that's impressive in itself because you figure...
Yeah. Without your parent and being upset, you had every reason to be angry and hateful and turn to bad places. But I would say way to go to Rosemary's grandparents as well, because they did do a good job raising poor Donnie. That's why I said it was a kind of a short one, because I feel like it'll be real short once you get to the editing.
Well, and I don't feel sorry for the one dude, because Thomas, he went along with the shit. Now, I could agree, and I think that's why his sentence was the 40 years, because he didn't come forward to the police.
No.
That's not how things went down. He got drunk, he was bragging, and someone who heard that immediately did something about it. And then everyone else did what they needed to do in order for this case to be closed. He was not responsible for any of it other than being a drunken pig who confessed his own sins. He's just a piece of shit. He deserved the 40 years. I would say different if he had come forward right after the fact, literally at any given point, and been like, this is what happened. I need to clear my conscience. Her family needs closure. Anything of that sort. But that's not what happened. So he didn't deserve a break in this sentence.
No. Now, Thomas's son, he does grow up to be a piece of shit, which I can't be surprised because his dad is a piece of shit. But he ends up like stabbing some boat captain or something. He's in jail for murder, but I was like, well, he didn't fall far from that tree.
He didn't have a good role model at all. That's sad, though. I mean, that sucks because it's a life wasted, in my opinion.
Several. I just, like, I don't know. I know we like to do the whole when they're raised in a piece of shit atmosphere, then don't be surprised when they become a piece of shit. But Curtis does not seem to be raised by bad people. He doesn't seem to have a bad childhood. He had a successful career. He had family around there, wherever. But it's just like, he had a support system. He grew up in a good environment. From what I can tell, he's just a piece of shit.
That's what it sounds like. But you know what? There are people out there that are just pieces of garbage. So,
and I will say, when it comes to his parole hearing, he has nobody come forward to speak on his behalf.
Why would they?
I'm just saying is all. That I think that's also part of the whole, if he got paroled, you know how they like to have some sort of support system, a plan for when they get out? Because that's also part of that process.
Helps keep him on the street.
He's got nobody when he gets out. So what do you expect for him to do? And I hope he never gets out, because I'm not going to lie, that is a terrifying idea.
It's super terrifying. Wow. Thanks for that.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mind fucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.